All righty. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us. We will get started promptly at 4 o'clock. It's lovely to see so many people popping in. Awesome. All right. Looks like we're right at 4 o'clock. So we will get started. Righty. Good afternoon, everyone. Hello and welcome. My name is Kia Johnson with Center for Applied Linguistics, and we appreciate you joining us for our 30-minute webinar in our Research to Policy Critical Conversations in Language Education series. Our theme this year is Let's Be Real about literacy development for multilingual learners. In this series, we're focusing on addressing the real-world challenges and opportunities in supporting literacy development for multilingual learners. Through dynamic discussions with leading voices in the field, we're exploring innovative strategies, research-centered approaches, and practical policy insights to enhance literacy outcomes for diverse multilingual learners. Today's webinar is titled Effective Instruction for Biliteracy Development of Emergent Bilingual Students, and we'll be speaking with Danling Fu, and I'm joined by Esther De Jong and Leslie Fink. We are recording this webinar, and we'll be posting the recording on the website after the event. So before we begin, please make sure that you're muted to avoid interruptions, and you can activate closed captioning if needed by pressing the closed caption button at the bottom of your screen. This event is provided as a public service, and the views, thoughts, and opinions expressed belong solely to our guest speakers and do not necessarily represent the views of our organization. Our panel comprises esteemed experts who work at the intersection of research, policy, and practice in language education, language access, and equity. You can learn more about them on our webinar's webpage, and I will share that link in the chat shortly. We do encourage you to ask your questions using the Q&A box throughout this webinar, and we will answer as many questions as possible at the end of our discussion. This is an excellent opportunity to tap into the wealth of knowledge that we're fortunate to have here today. You can also click the chat button at the bottom of your screen to share your thoughts and comments at any time. So to try it out now, let us know where you're listening from by putting your response in the chat. And with that, I will pass us over to our speakers for the day.
Yeah, I think maybe the chat is disabled, so maybe we need to take a look at that.
I will.
Sorry, Leslie, go for it.
Thanks. All right. Thank you, everyone, for joining us. And I will start us off with our first question, which is, Danling, can you tell us about your research and what that research says about bilingual learners learning to write in English? Is it different for students in English medium programs versus bilingual programs?
Thank you. Thank you, Leslie, and for the Center of Applied Linguistics give me this opportunity to talk about my research in the past 3 decades. And my research has been focused on the literacy development of new immigrant students with a special focus on writing and the biliteracy development of emerging bilingual students. So I would like to first talk about the major findings from my research and how this relate to the writing. So first, the finding is teach students not curriculum. Don't use great curriculum standard to guide teaching of emerging bilingual students or to assess their learning progress or push them to reach the standards, but focus on what they can do and push them to their next level to their learning. And also new immigrants are very different, even if they came from the same country around the same time or at the same age. Some know very little English and some can read, write English very well. Some have very strong home language literacy, but some don't. Some can read and write well in English, but struggle to speak English. Some can speak English fluently, but cannot read, write well in English. So we should assess and teach them based on their needs, challenge them but not overwhelm them, teach the skill they need but not bore them with meaningless drills and repetition. We need to make sure they are making steady progress with confidence and joy in learning. And those home language literacy is very important for bilingual literacy development of emerging bilinguals. This should mean for all kinds of language learning, foreign language, second language, or learning a new language for special purpose. Home language is a knowledge base, the linguistic foundation and the social emotion support for EBs to study a new language, use a new language to learn. Students who have very strong home language literacy proficiency would reach the successful learning a new language or learning in a new language much more effectively or efficiently than those who don't. When students are learning a new language, they are becoming bilinguals, but not becoming new monolinguals. Their home language, including their home culture, will always be part of them in their thinking process, at the tips of their tongues, or in their ways of expression. So how this relate to the writings and all these findings? So now I'm connecting all these findings to the writing. First is teach EB students to develop and their findings, their language skills from what they can do. If they have a very strong home literacy, are beginners of English, let them start to write in their home language so they can continue to develop their writing competence. This competence and includes thinking, organizing ideas, or understanding facts and opinions, or using examples to support claims. These are transferable literacy skills. For beginning English learners, they can write in their home language. They use translation software or AR to translate their work into English, then practice reading and retelling their translated work. Through reading their own work, they will gradually develop the language skills they need for speaking and writing English. And also, if those students, some of those students are cipher students, which means they have very limited reading and writing ability in their home language, then we need to start with their oral language. We can let them talk into the phone or transcribe their oral language into written language with the help from some friends who speak their home language. Or they can draw their ideas with captions, write captions, or they can tell their stories or idea to a student with some English proficiency who shares their home language. That these students can record and decipher students' oral stories and all text. Cipher students have ideas and strong emotions because of their traumatic experience in war zone, dangerous situation, or famine. We need to let them use any ways they can to express their feelings, ideas, what they went through. The student who recorded the story will develop their language and writing skills as well. And the other student in class would learn a lot about them by listening to their stories, gaining understanding of the world beyond theirs. It is a great way to get students to know each other and including everyone into the school community through listening to each other's stories. We need to let all students join our learning community through reading and writing, but not wait outside until they are able to read and write in English. Writing is thinking, and we need to activate and develop the thinking while helping them gain their English language proficiency. Otherwise, their thinking would get stagnated and become not knowing what and how to write. So home language is always part of a bilingual writers in their expressions, word choice, and thinking process. Therefore, home language and accent will always be in their writing, just like in their speaking. For EB students, especially the new language English learners, the home language traits are visibly strong in their English written expressions. We need to understand the transition in their thinking development. as bilingual writers, usually from totally thinking in their home language while during the composing process, or partially or finally mostly to thinking in English when required to produce English text. When they think in their home language while writing in English, their English writing is much impacted by home language in terms of grammar, sentence structure, word choice, and ways of expression. With the increasing of input from English orally or through writing, and their writing would gradually be closer to conventional English if they have opportunity to write all the time. Just like listening to any speakers, we need to read through their heavy accent to understand what they try to say, help them to say clearly, and develop their conventional English skills by helping them to write better. Last, I will come to, talk about the translanguage approach. This is grounded with the plural linguistic theory. It values multilingual competence of bilinguals and sees flexible ways of using languages they possess as natural and creative. Translanguage practice helps them communicate effectively, connects with others emotionally, and enables them to express themselves deeply. This flexible approach in communication is translanguage practice, which demonstrates the creative way of all bilinguals, emergent or experienced, enable them to use all the language tools to function as the literacy beings. And talk about the difference between the English media program and bilingual program. And the emphasis in these two programs are different. English and literacy and language is the focus of English media program. And usually home language literacy is the focus of bilingual program. Often the demand of writing in the English media program is much higher, more English requirement, more scaffolding in the EB program. But in bilingual program, especially at the middle school or high school level, there are some writing assignment, but not enough writing instruction in the bilingual program, so-called home language program. So usually Cipher students do not get much chance to develop their home language writing proficiency. In our English-dominant society, English media program has much better developed curriculum than bilingual program, especially in terms of writing instruction. Currently, I'm working with the bilingual program in the New York City Department of Education in designing a Chinese language arts program, curriculum for the 6th to 10th grades. The major issues in the design is lack of writing instruction. And when we observe the pilot students and teachers in the classroom, now all the teachers we observed reported students all struggle, and even proficient Chinese language arts students still struggle to write. But curriculum doesn't provide well-developed instruction for them to teach writing, for the teachers to teach writing. And also recently, I've heard a program called LERTS program. This program stands for Language Essentials for Teachers for Reading and Spelling. And just listen to the teachers reading spelling. This program is based on the science of reading and concept. So it indicates writing is simply so the spelling, indicates writing is simply spelling. Does this mean reading is sounding words out and writing is spelling words out? How can this kind of education produce very literate beings with analytic skills and creative thinking? Can this kind of education keep this nation as the so-called world power, as MAGA tries to do? So my suggestion is, even though the two programs have different focus in language as a learning medium, please give students flexibility in their language use to maximum their learning potentials. language is a learning tool. So any language used as long as it enhances their thinking should be okay, especially during the learning process. Even for the final assessment, we should think more creative ways to assess our EB students' learning rather than stick to the traditional monolingual-oriented assessment methods. I think in either English media program or bilingual program, rather than simply guiding writing, giving writing assignment, we should teach writing, scaffold students throughout their writing process to help them develop overall writing competence, connecting reading, writing, listening, and speaking, four communicative method, the modes throughout all language and literacy instruction. That's my this.
Thank you. There were so many great ideas there. I know I will be continuing to think about those for a while. So I think Esther has our next question.
Yeah, Danling, thank you so much for kind of highlighting how important it is that we think about writing in relationship to creative and, critical thinking, and that we really need to think about students' entire repertoires, no matter who they are and where they come from and what home language and English skills they bring, whether they have interrupted schooling, like the SIVE students, or whether they have been to school all the way up to the point when they came to the United States, but how important it is to really approach that. Love the don't let them wait outside phrasing that you used to kind of say we're all part of this community. And I think that's such an important message right now. Right now, there are many different things happening in the policy world related to literacy. A lot of it is focused, like you said, within the K-3 world. But people are trying to figure out what does this mean, and should we have these approaches also for older students, and what does that look like? So as you're looking at kind of the policy landscape right now in terms of literacy, and the kinds of proposals that we hear, what kinds of changes, given your work, and hopefully we have a chance to talk a little bit too about the fact that you've also worked a lot with students who are learning to write across different writing systems. But knowing what you know about writing and kind of looking at the landscape in terms of policy, what kind of changes, if you had to kind of highlight some changes that you think are particularly important to consider, given what you just have told us about what we know about learning how to write in an additional language?
So for in terms of policy, I think, I still feel the policy should value the emerging bilingual students' home language and literacy, and it's not enough. So I would like the policy would value EB's home language literacy and supporting its development more. Don't see or indicate the EB's home language or literacy is a separation from their learning mainstream language or literacy, or just assume its development would hurt so-called national identity, even the homeland security. The immigrants have brought their cultures, languages, and knowledge and skills to make this country the best in the world. Their diverse language are human and economical and education assets, not only to individuals, but to the nation. We value natural resources, even going to the wars for minerals, oil, or timbers, but we don't value human resources, and just like language and culture enough. Without this language, there would be no AI or any high technology that would seemingly soon overpower us human beings if we don't value ourselves enough. So the other things I feel like avoid and always using any unified program, including the ESL bilingual and ones for all EBs, especially in teaching of writing. That is not teaching them all in the same pace. The sequence of learning based on the time of their arrival, the length of their being in this country, or the age of the schooling history. Design the teaching based on the assessment on both of their home and and targeted language literacy, orally or in writing. Unified program is to teaching robots, but not humans with different needs and backgrounds. So, and also don't require the students to stick strictly to one language or language separation policy all the time in their instruction. Meaning-based instruction learning need both teachers and students to use language they know flexibly to explore, conveying the meaning. Otherwise, it would be studying the language for the sake of language, but not using it as a tool to develop students' overall literacy development. Language drill has a place in language instruction and learning, but it shouldn't always be the only and lengthy focus. Definitely, the instruction based on language only or separation policy doesn't encourage a student to think deeply and write better. And so it's easy to focus on basic language skills when we see what emerging students, bilingual students, are not able to do in the target language or in English, and tend to neglect guiding them to develop abilities or skills in writing, through which to explore possibility, formulate new connection between knowledge and context. This neglection would only produce passive laborers who would be easily replaced by AI, which are we seeing happening right now in front of us. And thus, I want the policymakers and to give teachers more autonomy, respect and trust them and leave them alone rather than letting non-educators to tell them what they should do. Teaching, especially teaching of writing, is very demanding and challenging job. Teaching EB needs teachers with more expertise, extra dedication. If our teachers cannot enjoy teaching, how can our students enjoy learning?
Well said. Thank you. So that does bring us into the classroom. You've talked somewhat about these larger scale policies, but from a more zoomed in view, what call to action would you offer our audience? What specific practices for districts, for leaders, for school leaders, or for classroom teachers would you recommend?
So I think a teacher matters. So I first to talk to my teacher colleagues. So I still think is teach students, not program, not standard or tests. Invite students' home language culture into your classroom to enhance their academic learning, their collaboration with peers, their exploration of new knowledge and possibilities through reading and writing. Also, let our EB students invite us to enter their language and culture world to coexist as co-learners. And also strategically challenge the unreasonable demands. Trust your own expertise as educators, your intuitive understanding of your students, your experience in teaching, so as to take control of our teaching and our classroom, which is the only way for us to survive in our profession. The other thing is to take a co-learning stance in your classroom with your students in today's high-tech and AI-permeated world. Let's develop our high-tech and AI literacy together with our students. They know more all the time to figure out ways of using AI to assist our teaching and learning rather than letting AI take over our teaching and learning or thinking. My question is, how can we use AI to help us become more creative, more critical, and more analytical, rather than letting AI to do the work for us? This is the area we need to explore together with our students more.
Thank you so much, Danling. It's always amazing how fast our time goes together. We will take a little bit of time for the last 5 minutes or so to take a look at the questions in the chat. If you have questions or other questions that are already posted there, please go ahead and put them in the Q&A. A really interesting question, Danling. So bilingual programs often have third language or fourth language speakers in them. They're not always two monolingual groups or even just one monolingual group. And so the question is, if you have a bilingual program with speakers of other languages than the instructional language, how does translanguaging fit within those kinds of programs? The question is, does translanguaging imply using those two languages alone in the learning context, or how would you include these other languages as well? What does that look like?
Yeah. Translanguaging is not only two language for translate. Translanguage means you can use any language, and for the students to learn. And so if there's a classroom have different kind of languages, then we even need to use, let students use their own language to learn. Because always think about if we're learning first, we're learning to think. Think is automatically. Thinking is not if you force students to use, the language they're still developing to think, and then they cannot think. So that's what a lot of students are silent and they feel blank because you force them to do the thinking, use the language still developing. So that's why we allow students, especially in the writing, in the drafting stage, in the brainstorming stage, and even discuss their writing, they can use the language who come to their mind first. This is called translanguage. It's allow any language come to you to maximize your thinking and learning. But of course, the teacher said, I don't understand. That's true. The teachers, you don't have to understand everyone because when they are thinking, deep thinking and creative thinking, and they use their strong language, then we come to their mind first. And then after they have thinking on paper or thinking somewhere, and they can slowly, gradually, and use a new language to tell you. So that's what I think translanguage work is. Let language come into the mind first to do the thinking, to do the hard working job.
I think that's a great idea. And I look forward to hearing how people are implementing it, maybe at a future webinar, how someone has implemented these ideas in their own classrooms. Let's see, we have some other questions in the chat. And then one that I would like to hear more about is, you state that if teachers do not enjoy teaching, how can we expect students to enjoy learning? And someone would like to know, how do we bring that form of thinking, that great idea, into educator professional development so that it can be more effective?
I think, I know there's a lot of demand politically. It's almost like make us so miserable and in the teaching because our teachers and it's really lose their autonomy. They have to do something they don't believe even. So this is the kind of things I think, I would have policy is to and trust our teachers and give more PDs to help them and make them accept these and respect them and then leave them alone. So I do think, in order to make teacher happy, we have to give teacher autonomy. We have to respect them. And, if we don't respect them and we always teach them, and especially we let outside non-educators to tell, educators what to do, that makes them, we need the leaders, supporters. We need policy to support our teachers, give them time and nurture them, support them rather than force them to do something and they don't believe it.
And I would add, it's also an interesting challenge for teacher education programs.
Yeah.
Right. And to kind of really and create and support that joy of teaching and learning in those spaces as well, since professional learning spans the entire career. Kia is back, which means we are at the end of this wonderful session. Go for it, Kia.
Yes,
Thank you, Danling, so much.
yes, now I know how Althea feels when that time goes by and I have to pop my face up and I'm like, but we have such good questions. So thank you for any of the additional questions we have in the Q&A. We do like to collect them, and we will get them to the speaker. And as she's able to respond, if there are any resources or responses that she can provide to them, they will be shared on this event's webinar page, which I've put in the chat for everyone again. We wanted to thank you again, Danling, for your expertise. You had really great ideas and you had lots of people singing your praises in the chat today. So I'm sure they're going to want to know a lot more about your work. So we will gather those resources from her and get them up on that webinar site as soon as possible and share the recording of this session with you all as well. Again, we thank everyone for your time today, and we thank our speaker and our facilitators for giving us another enlightening session. And we hope that you'll join us again when we start our next series and our new theme in 2026. So thank you all for your time this afternoon and have a great holiday season.
Bye, everybody.
Thank you.